Two little girls were kneeling in the snow at a stranger's grave when the billionaire found them, except she wasn't a stranger to them. They called his dead wife their guardian angel, said she'd promised to protect them, and when their mother died in his arms 12 hours later, her final words were a warning: don't let Marcus find them. Now someone's breaking into his mansion at 3 a.m. with syringes and body bags, and Anthony has 72 hours to figure out why his wife's last act of kindness has marked these children for death. Welcome back, my strong family and friends, to Mr. Crown Stories. If no one told you today, hear this: you are enough. You are worthy. You are the light that fights back the darkness. I make these stories for hearts like yours, hearts that have been hurt but refuse to break, hearts still hoping for sunrise after the longest night. If this story touches your soul, click subscribe, leave a comment saying I am here, and tell me where you're watching from, because tomorrow, I'll share another story that speaks to the warrior in you. Every word I write is for you, the one who faced pain and chose to stand. May your heart find hope, your burdens grow lighter, and your spirit shine brighter with each new day. Let's walk this road together, hand in hand, heart to heart. Now, let us begin. Girls, he said gently, are you all right? Both turned at once. Two faces, the same heart-shaped features, the same dark curls, the same frightened eyes. The older one straightened quickly, trying to look brave. We didn't mean to bother her, sir. We came to see Miss Julie. Miss Julie? Anthony asked, his voice unsteady. The smaller girl nodded. She said she would be here when we needed her. He glanced down at the grave. Julie Cantrell. Beloved wife, light to all. His throat tightened. Julie had been gone 2 years. They'd had no children. He had buried every dream of fatherhood with her. But here stood two little girls speaking of her as if she were their guardian angel. What are your names? He asked softly. I'm Isabella, the older one said, standing tall despite the cold. This is Annabella. And how old are you? 6, Isabella replied. We're twins. He gave a faint smile. I can see that. His eyes caught the threadbare gloves, the mismatched shoes. Their coats were too thin for the season, and their faces bore the haunted look of children who'd known too much hunger, too much fear. Are you here alone? Isabella hesitated, then nodded. Our mom's in the hospital. She said if she got too sick, we should come find Miss Julie. She promised she'd help us. Anthony blinked. Promised? Miss Julie? Yes, sir, Isabella said. Mom said Miss Julie was our guardian angel. The world seemed to tilt. Julie, his Julie, had been a hospital volunteer for years, always helping people who couldn't pay their bills, never talking about it at home. He'd thought it was just occasional work. But this. What's your mother's name? He asked, though part of him already feared the answer. Renee Carter, Isabella said. Anthony felt the name strike something deep within him. Not recognition, something stranger, heavier, like a memory just out of reach. How did she know my wife? Annabella rummaged through her small pink backpack and produced a bent plastic ID card. Julie's smiling face stared back at him. Grace Mercy Hospital volunteer. Julie Cantrell. Mom said this lady helped her when she was in trouble, Annabella whispered. She said if anything bad ever happened, Miss Julie would keep her promise. Anthony's knees went weak. He crouched to meet them eye to eye. And where have you been staying? The shelter, Isabella said. But it's full now, so sometimes the bus stop. It's warm there at night. Her words stabbed at him like knives to the chest. You can't stay at a bus stop, he said firmly. It's not safe. Isabella's chin trembled. We didn't know where else to go. Mommy said, come here. And Miss Julie would know what to do. When those little girls said their mother told them to find Julie Cantrell, something in Anthony's heart, and maybe in ours, broke open. It reminds us that kindness never really dies. It simply finds new hands to carry it forward. If this moment touched you, tell us where you're watching from in the comments. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more stories that speak to the heart. The wind swept through the cemetery, rattling the iron gate. Anthony looked at the grave, at Julie's name carved in soft stone, and felt the old ache rise in his chest. Even in death, she was still helping people, still keeping promises he'd never known about. He looked back at the girls. "You can't stay out here tonight. Come with me. I'll take you somewhere warm." Isabella hesitated. "But you don't know us." "I knew your mom's friend," Anthony said quietly. "And if Julie made a promise, I'll make sure it's kept." He reached out a hand. After a long pause, Isabella placed her small palm in his. Her sister followed, clutching her coat. Together, they walked out of the cemetery under a sky streaked with fading gold. As they reached the gate, Anthony glanced back at Julie's grave. The lilies in his hand trembled. He whispered, "Julie, what have you done?" They drove in silence through the city. The girls sat close together in the back seat of Anthony's Mercedes, watching lights flicker across the window like falling stars. "Are you hungry?" he asked. "A little," Annabella murmured. "We had crackers from the shelter." Anthony pulled into a quiet roadside diner. The waitress, a woman around his age, raised an eyebrow when he entered with two small girls, but she smiled kindly. "3 grilled cheeses," he said. "And hot chocolate." Isabella folded her hands on the table, her manners careful. "Thank you, sir." Annabella grinned shyly. "Mom says to always say thank you, even when life forgets to be nice." Anthony felt something crack inside him. Julie had once said something almost identical. "Kindness doesn't wait to be earned, Anthony. It simply gives because it must." After dinner, he drove them to Grace Mercy Hospital. The smell of antiseptic struck him like a memory. Julie had spent her final nights here, whispering to him about the light beyond pain. He approached the nurse's desk. "Renee Carter," he said. The nurse frowned. "Room 214. She's in critical care." He nodded. "Thank you." Isabella clutched his coat as they walked down the corridor. "Do you think she's awake?" "I hope so," Anthony said. "She'll be glad to see you." The room was dim, the only light coming from the heart monitor's gentle glow. A woman lay pale and still, oxygen tubes winding from her face. "Mom," Isabella breathed, rushing forward. Renee's eyes fluttered open. "My girls." Her voice was barely a whisper. "You found her." Anthony stepped closer. "You mean Julie?" Renee nodded weakly. "She kept her promise." He frowned. "What promise?" Her gaze drifted to the twins, and a faint smile appeared. That they'd never be alone. The monitor beeped steadily. The girls climbed onto the bed, pressing their faces against her arms. Anthony stood there, watching in silence, his heart heavy and bewildered. Julie had always said she wanted her kindness to outlive her. Somehow it had. And as he looked at the two small girls clinging to their dying mother, he realized that maybe Julie hadn't left him alone after all. Maybe she had sent him a reason to live again. The steady beep of the heart monitor echoed through the hospital room like a fragile heartbeat of time itself. Anthony stood at the foot of the bed, his hands shoved deep in his coat pockets, unsure whether to stay or step back. The twins clung to their mother, whispering words too soft to hear. Renee Carter looked impossibly frail, her brown skin pale beneath the fluorescent light, her breathing shallow and uneven. After several minutes, her eyes found Anthony again. "You're Julie's husband," she said softly. He nodded, his throat tight. "Yes. Anthony Cantrell." A weak smile touched her lips. "She talked about you. All the time." Her voice cracked. "Said you were the strongest man she knew, but that you'd forgotten how to see people. Only saw problems to solve." Anthony flinched. Julie had said that to him once, during one of their last arguments before she got sick. He dismissed it then. Now, hearing it from a dying stranger's lips, it cut deeper than any blade. "How did you know my wife?" he asked quietly. Renee's gaze drifted to the ceiling, as if gathering strength from some invisible source. 3 years ago, I was in trouble. Bad trouble." She paused, wheezing softly. "My ex. Marcus. He was violent. Controlling. I tried to leave, but I had nothing. No money. No family. And I was pregnant. Isabella squeezed her mother's hand tighter. I came to this hospital for a checkup, Renee continued, her voice fading. I couldn't pay. They were going to turn me away. But Julie. Her eyes glistened. Julie saw me crying in the waiting room. She sat down beside me like we were old friends. She said, "No child comes into this world without help." Anthony's chest constricted. That sounded exactly like something Julie would say. She paid for everything, Renee whispered. The ultrasounds. The medications. The delivery. She even came to see the girls when they were born. A tear slipped down her cheek. She held them both in her arms and said, "These little lights shouldn't be lost to the darkness." Anthony felt his knees weaken. He gripped the bed rail for support. Julie had held these children. Had loved them. Had protected them. And he'd never known. She helped me leave Marcus, Renee said. Paid for a lawyer. Helped me get a restraining order. Got me into a shelter, then into an apartment. Her breathing grew more labored. She visited us every month. Brought clothes, food, toys. She never asked for anything. She just gave. Why didn't she tell me? Anthony's voice cracked despite himself. Renee looked at him with sad, knowing eyes. She said you had enough weight on your shoulders. That you carried the world like it was your job to fix it all alone. She coughed weakly. She didn't want you to think this was another problem you had to solve. She wanted it to be love. The heart monitor beeped steadily, each tone a reminder that time was running out. When she got sick, Renee continued, she made me promise something. She said, "If I don't make it, and if you ever can't take care of the girls, take them to my grave. Tell them to wait there. Anthony will come. And he'll understand." Anthony's vision blurred. She said that. Renee nodded. She believed in you more than you believed in yourself. A nurse entered quietly, checking the monitors, her expression grave. She glanced at Anthony. "Sir, I think the children should say their goodbyes soon. Her vitals are declining." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Isabella's face crumpled. "No. No, Mommy, please." "Mom, you said you'd fight," Annabella sobbed. "You promised." Renee pulled them closer, her frail arms trembling with effort. "I tried, babies. I tried so hard." She kissed their foreheads. "But Miss Julie kept her promise. She sent you someone." Both girls turned to look at Anthony, their faces streaked with tears. "You'll take care of them?" Renee's voice was barely audible now. Julie promised they'd never be alone. Please, keep her promise. Anthony felt the weight of those words settle on his shoulders like iron chains. He'd spent 2 years drowning in grief, building walls around his heart, convincing himself he was better off alone. But now these 2 children, these strangers who weren't strangers at all, needed him. He swallowed hard. "I don't know how to be a father." "You don't have to know," Renee whispered. "You just have to love them." Her eyes fluttered closed. The monitor's beeping slowed. "Please," she breathed. "Don't let them be alone." Anthony looked at the twins, at their tear-stained faces and trembling shoulders. He thought of Julie, of the woman he'd loved and lost, of all the goodness she'd poured into the world while he was too blind to see. "I promise," he said quietly. "I'll keep her promise." Renee smiled, a peaceful expression washing over her face. "Thank you." The monitor beeped slower. Slower. Then, a long, hollow tone. "No." Isabella screamed. The nurse rushed forward, but Renee's hand had already gone limp. She was gone. The next hours passed in a blur. Hospital staff moved with practiced efficiency. Forms were signed. Arrangements were made. Social services was called. Anthony sat with the girls in the waiting room, their small bodies pressed against his sides, sobbing into his coat. He didn't know what to say. Didn't know how to comfort them. So he just sat there, letting them cry, his own grief tangled with theirs. When the social worker arrived, a tired-looking woman with kind eyes, she explained the process. We'll need to place them in temporary foster care until we can locate next of kin. No, Anthony said firmly. They're staying with me. The woman frowned. Sir, are you a relative? My wife knew them. She made a promise. He looked down at the twins. And I'm keeping it. It's not that simple. There are procedures. Then start them, Anthony interrupted. I'll hire the best family lawyer in the city. But these girls are not going into the system. The social worker studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I'll see what I can do. But for tonight, they'll need somewhere safe. I'll take care of it. That night, Anthony checked them into the presidential suite at the Grandview Hotel, the same hotel where he and Julie had stayed on their honeymoon. The irony wasn't lost on him. The girls stood in the middle of the massive room, looking small and lost. Are you sure we can stay here? Isabella whispered. It looks expensive. It's okay, Anthony said gently. You're safe here. He ordered room service, chicken tenders, French fries, hot chocolate. The girls ate mechanically, their eyes hollow with grief. After dinner, he showed them to the bedroom. You can sleep here tonight. I'll be right next door if you need anything. But as he turned to leave, Annabella's voice stopped him. Will you stay? Just until we fall asleep. Something in his chest cracked. Of course. They climbed into the massive bed, looking impossibly small beneath the luxury linens. Anthony sat in the chair beside them, watching as they held each other. Then Isabella began to whisper, Now I lay me down to sleep, I pray the Lord my soul to keep. Annabella joined her, If I should die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take. Their voices trembled. And please God, take care of Mommy. And tell Miss Julie we said thank you. Amen. Anthony felt tears burn behind his eyes. He hadn't prayed since Julie died. Hadn't believed there was anyone listening. But hearing these children, orphans now just like that, still finding faith in the darkness, it broke something open inside him. When they finally fell asleep, Anthony stood and walked to the living room. He'd brought Renee's personal belongings from the hospital, a small duffel bag the nurse had given him. Inside, he found worn clothes, a few photographs, and a manila envelope with Julie's signature across the seal. His hands shook as he opened it. Inside were documents, bank statements showing payments to Renee Carter, legal papers for a restraining order against Marcus Bennett, and a handwritten note in Julie's careful script. Anthony, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone and Renee needed you. I'm sorry I never told you about them. I was afraid you'd see it as charity, as obligation. But it was never that. It was love. These girls deserve a chance at life. If something happens to Renee, please don't let them fall through the cracks. They're special. I know you'll see it too. Trust your heart. Julie. Anthony stared at the letter, his wife's words echoing in his mind. Trust your heart. But his heart was a broken, grieving thing. How could he trust it to care for two children who just lost everything? He looked toward the bedroom, where Isabella and Annabella slept, their faces finally peaceful. Julie had believed he could do this. Had believed in him even when he didn't believe in himself. Maybe it was time he tried. Anthony woke to his phone vibrating violently on the nightstand. The hotel room was dark, the clock reading 3:47 a.m. He grabbed the phone, his heart already racing. Mr. Cantrell? A woman's voice, urgent and professional. This is Grace Mercy Hospital. It's about Renee Carter. You need to come now. The line went dead. Anthony was on his feet instantly, pulling on his clothes. He rushed to the girls' room and gently shook Isabella's shoulder. Girls, wake up. We need to go to the hospital. Their eyes snapped open, already filled with understanding and terror. Is it Mom? Annabella whispered. Anthony's silence was answer enough. The hospital corridors felt different at night, emptier, colder, haunted by fluorescent lights that hummed like dying insects. The girls ran ahead, their small feet slapping against linoleum, and Anthony followed, his chest tight with dread. When they reached room 214, a nurse stood outside, her expression grave. "She's been asking for them," the nurse said quietly. "Her vitals are failing. I'm sorry, but you should say goodbye." Anthony nodded, unable to speak. He pushed open the door. Renee lay even paler than before, her breathing ragged and shallow. The oxygen mask fogged with each labored breath. Her eyes opened when she heard them enter. "My girls," she whispered, lifting a trembling hand. Isabella and Annabella rushed to either side of the bed, each taking one of their mother's hands. "Mommy, please don't go," Isabella sobbed. "Please. We need you." "We'll be good," Annabella added desperately. "We promise. Just stay." Renee's eyes filled with tears. "Oh, babies. You've always been good. So good." She squeezed their hands weakly. "That's not why I have to go." "Then why?" Isabella's voice broke. "Why can't you fight harder? Some battles." Renee coughed, her whole body shaking. "Some battles aren't meant to be won. They're meant to teach us what matters." Anthony stood at the foot of the bed, feeling like an intruder in this sacred moment of goodbye. But Renee's eyes found his. "Anthony," she breathed. "Come closer." He stepped forward, his throat burning. "Julie told me." Renee paused, gasping for air. "She told me you were afraid. Afraid of loving again. Afraid of losing people." Anthony's hands clenched into fists. How had Julie known that? How had she seen through his walls when he'd barely admitted it to himself? But she said. Renee continued, each word an obvious struggle. She said the only way to honor those we've lost is to love those who remain. The heart monitors beeping grew irregular. "Promise me," Renee whispered, gripping the twins' hands tighter. "Don't let them be alone." Julie said you'd finish her work. She believed in you. Please." Her breathing stuttered. "Please, believe in yourself." "I promise," Anthony said, his voice breaking. "I swear to you, Renee. They won't be alone." A peaceful smile crossed Renee's face. She looked at her daughters one last time. "I love you both. So much. Be brave for me. Be kind." "Mommy," Isabella's voice was desperate. "And remember." Renee's eyes began to close. "Remember that love. Love never really ends. It just changes form." The monitor's beeping slowed. Slower. Slower. Then, a single sustained tone that seemed to fill the entire universe. "N.O." Both girls screamed in unison. Isabella threw herself across her mother's chest. "Mom, wake up. Please wake up." Annabella shook Renee's hand frantically. "Mommy, you can't leave us. You can't." Anthony felt something inside his chest crack wide open, not just for these children, but for every loss he'd ever suffered. For Julie. For his own shattered dreams of fatherhood. For the cruelty of a world that took mothers from their children. Medical staff rushed in, but Anthony knew it was over. He gently pulled the girls away as a nurse covered Renee's face with a sheet. "No, no, no." Isabella collapsed against Anthony's chest, her whole body convulsing with sobs. Annabella clung to his waist, screaming into his coat. And Anthony, who hadn't cried since Julie's funeral, felt hot tears streaming down his face. He wrapped his arms around both girls and held them as they shattered. An hour later, Anthony sat in the hospital administrator's office while the twins dozed fitfully in chairs nearby, exhausted from grief. The administrator, a gray-haired man named Dr. Patterson, slid a folder across the desk. "We'll need to notify Child Protective Services," he said gently. "Standard protocol when a parent passes without clear guardianship arrangements." "I'll be taking them," Anthony said firmly. Dr. Patterson raised an eyebrow. "Sir, with all due respect, That's not a simple process. There are home studies, background checks, legal procedures. Then start them. Tonight. Mr. Cantrell. These children just lost their mother, Anthony interrupted, his voice cold with determination. I made a promise. To Renee. And to my wife. They're not going into the system. Dr. Patterson studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I'll make some calls. But there's something you should know. What? Ms. Carter was frightened the last few days. There were multiple calls to the ward from someone claiming to be family. A man. She became agitated whenever the nurses mentioned it. She specifically instructed us not to give out her room number or condition to anyone except you. Anthony's blood ran cold. Did she say who it was? No. But she seemed terrified. Dr. Patterson's expression darkened. I think it might have been the ex-partner. Marcus Bennett. The name hung in the air like a threat. Anthony thought of the restraining order in Julie's documents. Of Renee's stories about violence and control. If he calls again, Anthony said quietly, you tell him nothing. And you contact me immediately. Of course. By the time Anthony left the hospital with the girls, the sun was rising, a cold gray dawn that seemed to mock the idea of new beginnings. He called his attorney, Richard Hastings, from the car. Anthony. Richard's voice was groggy. It's 6 in the morning. I need you to file emergency guardianship papers. Today. What? For who? 2 6-year-old girls. Their mother just died. I made a promise to take care of them. There was a long pause. Anthony, do you understand what you're asking? Emergency guardianship requires proof of immediate danger or abandonment. You're not a relative. This could become extremely complicated. I don't care how complicated it gets. Their father is an abusive ex-partner with a restraining order, Anthony interrupted. Marcus Bennett. Look him up. If he tries to claim custody, I want every legal barrier in place. Richard sighed heavily. This is going to be a battle, Anthony. The court system doesn't just hand children to billionaires. There will be investigations, home studies, possibly a custody fight if the father surfaces. Then we fight. And if you lose? Anthony looked in the rearview mirror at Isabella and Annabella, their faces pressed against the window, eyes red and hollow. I won't lose, he said quietly. I can't. The drive to Anthony's mansion took 40 minutes. The girls were silent, staring out the windows as the city gave way to the exclusive hills where only the wealthiest families lived. When the iron gate swung open and the estate came into view, Annabella gasped softly. The mansion was enormous, 3 stories of white stone and glass, surrounded by manicured gardens and a fountain that had been turned off for winter. Anthony pulled into the circular driveway and killed the engine. For the first time, he saw his home through their eyes, cold, imposing, empty. A monument to loneliness. Is this where we're staying? Isabella asked hesitantly. This is home now, Anthony said, though the word felt foreign in his mouth. He hadn't thought of this place as home since Julie died. It was just the place he returned to at night. He opened their doors and led them up the marble steps. The front door unlocked with a soft beep, and they stepped into the grand foyer. The girls froze. Everything was white and gray, minimalist, expensive, lifeless. A crystal chandelier hung overhead like a frozen explosion. Their footsteps echoed against marble floors. It's so big, Annabella whispered, instinctively moving closer to her sister. Anthony suddenly felt ashamed. This wasn't a home for children. It was a tomb for memories. I know it's a lot, he said softly. But we'll make it work. We'll make it warmer. Isabella looked up at him, her eyes still puffy from crying. Do you live here all alone? The question hit harder than it should have. I did, Anthony admitted. But not anymore. He led them through the house, showing them the kitchen, the living room, the library. Everything felt too big, too clean, too cold. Finally, they reached the second floor. These will be your rooms, he said, opening a door to a guest suite. There are 2 beds, a bathroom, and... Can we share? Annabella interrupted suddenly. Please? We've never slept apart. Anthony's chest tightened. Of course. Whatever you need. The girls stepped inside, setting down their small backpacks, their only possessions in the world. They stood in the middle of the luxurious room looking utterly lost. I'll let you rest, Anthony said. If you need anything. Mr. Cantrell? Isabella's voice stopped him. You can call me Anthony. Anthony. She swallowed hard. Thank you. For keeping your promise. He nodded, not trusting his voice. As he closed the door, he heard Annabella whisper to her sister, Do you think Mom can see us? Do you think she knows we're safe? I think Miss Julie is showing her, Isabella whispered back. Anthony leaned against the wall, his eyes burning. 2 scared little girls. An empty mansion. And a promise he had no idea how to keep. But he would try. For Julie. For Renee. For them. He would try. The first morning in the mansion, Anthony found both girls sitting on the edge of their bed, hands folded in their laps, afraid to touch anything. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating a room filled with things they'd never owned. Plush carpets, silk curtains, furniture that probably cost more than everything their mother had ever possessed. Good morning, Anthony said from the doorway, trying to sound cheerful. Did you sleep okay? Isabella nodded quickly. Too quickly. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. You don't have to call me sir, he said gently. Anthony is fine. Annabella's eyes were fixed on a porcelain vase on the dresser. Is it okay if we use the bathroom? We didn't want to break anything. Anthony's heart cracked. Of course you can use the bathroom. This is your home now. You can touch things. You can move around. You don't have to ask permission. But even as he said it, he saw the fear in their eyes, the fear of children who'd learned that nothing was truly theirs, that everything could be taken away. Come on, he said softly. Let's get some breakfast. They followed him downstairs like shadows, careful not to brush against anything. In the massive kitchen, Anthony stared at the Viking range and marble countertops, suddenly realizing he had no idea what children ate for breakfast. What do you usually have in the morning? He asked. Whatever's there, Isabella said quietly. At the shelter, it was usually oatmeal. Sometimes cereal if they had extra. Anthony opened his refrigerator, stocked with expensive cheeses, imported wines, and takeout containers from restaurants with Michelin stars. Nothing a child would recognize as food. How about pancakes? He suggested, though he hadn't made pancakes in years. Annabella's eyes lit up, just for a moment. Real pancakes. The realest pancakes you've ever seen. He had no idea if that was true, but he was determined to try. 20 minutes later, the kitchen was a disaster. Flour covered the countertops. Eggshells floated in the batter. The smoke alarm had gone off twice. But somehow, 3 slightly burnt pancakes sat on plates. The girls ate slowly, carefully, as if each bite might be their last. You can have more, Anthony said. As much as you want. Isabella looked up at him, syrup on her chin. Are you sure? We don't want to waste food. The question broke something in him. These children, who'd just lost everything, were worried about wasting food in a house where he threw away hundreds of dollars of groceries every week. I'm sure, he said firmly. You never have to worry about food again. The doorbell rang that afternoon, and Anthony opened it to find Marcia Rodriguez standing on the doorstep with 3 grocery bags and a determined expression. Marcia had been the Cantrell estate's housekeeper for 15 years. She'd taken leave after Julie died, unable to bear the emptiness of the house. But somehow, news of the twins had reached her. Mr. Cantrell, she said, pushing past him into the foyer. I heard you have children now and no sense. Where are they? Despite everything, Anthony almost smiled. Upstairs. In the guest suite. Marcia set down the groceries and marched up the stairs. Anthony followed, curious to see how the girls would react. She knocked gently on their door. "Hello? My name is Marcia. I used to work here when Mrs. Cantrell was alive." The door cracked open, and Isabella peered out. "You knew Miss Julie?" she asked. "I did, sweetheart. She was one of the kindest souls I ever met." Marcia smiled warmly. "And I brought you some things." She pulled out 2 stuffed animals, a bear and a bunny, along with coloring books, crayons, and a bag of gummy bears. Annabella's eyes went wide. "For us." "All yours," Marcia said. "And I'm going to teach Mr. Cantrell how to make proper meals for children, because left alone, he'd probably try to feed you caviar and champagne." The girls giggled, the first real sound of joy Anthony had heard from them. Over the next few days, Marcia became their anchor. She showed them which rooms they could play in, helped them pick out clothes from a shopping trip Anthony barely remembered taking them on, and sat with them when they cried at night. Because they did cry. Every night. Anthony would hear it through the walls, quiet, muffled sobs that the girls tried to hide. Sometimes he'd stand outside their door, hand raised to knock, unsure what to say or do. One night, he finally entered. Both girls were huddled together in one bed, their faces buried in pillows. "Can't sleep?" he asked softly. Isabella looked up, tears streaming down her cheeks. "We keep thinking about Mom. About how she's gone. And we'll never see her again." Anthony sat on the edge of the bed, feeling utterly inadequate. What did he know about comforting grieving children? He couldn't even comfort himself. "I know," he said quietly. "I lost someone too. My wife, Julie. And some nights, it still feels like she just left the room. Like if I turn around fast enough, she'll be there." Annabella sniffled. "Does it ever stop hurting?" "No," Anthony admitted, because he'd learned that lying to children was worse than the truth. "But it changes. It becomes softer. Like a bruise that's healing. It's still there, but it doesn't ache the same way." "Do you still miss her?" Isabella asked. "Every single day." "Then how do you keep going?" Anthony looked at both of them, these small, broken, brave souls, and realized he was answering that question for himself as much as for them. "Because she'd want me to," he said. "And because there are still people who need me. People like you." Isabella reached out and took his hand. Her palm was tiny, warm, trembling. "Thank you," she whispered, "for not letting us be alone." Anthony squeezed her hand gently. "You'll never be alone again. I promise." But the outside world had other plans. 3 days after the girls moved in, Anthony's phone exploded with notifications. His assistant, Patricia, called in a panic. "Sir, have you seen the news?" "What news?" "Check your email. Now." Anthony opened his laptop, and his blood ran cold. Photo after photo showed him with Isabella and Annabella, leaving the hospital, entering the hotel, walking through the mansion gates. Someone had been following them. Watching. The articles were vicious. Sources suggest the children may be from an extramarital affair. Investors question Cantrell's judgment and stability. Stock prices plummet as scandal deepens. His phone rang again. Richard Hastings, his attorney. "Anthony, we have a problem. Major investors are threatening to pull out. The board is calling an emergency meeting. And Child Protective Services just received an anonymous complaint claiming you're an unfit guardian." Anthony's hands clenched into fists. "From who?" "They won't say. But someone wants these girls out of your custody." Before Anthony could respond, he heard crying from upstairs. He rushed up to find both girls huddled in front of the television in the library, where a news anchor was showing their photos. "Is that us?" Annabella whispered, terrified. "Why are we on TV?" Isabella's face had gone pale. "Are they saying we're bad? That we shouldn't be here?" "No," Anthony said firmly, turning off the television. "Listen to me. Both of you. This isn't your fault." "But the news said." "The news is wrong," he interrupted. "They don't know you. They don't know what you've been through. They're just telling stories to sell papers. But what if they take us away? Isabella's voice broke. What if we have to leave? Anthony knelt in front of them, meeting their eyes. That is not going to happen. I made a promise. To your mother. To Julie. And to you. And I keep my promises. Even if it makes people angry? Annabella asked. Especially then. Marcia appeared in the doorway, her expression troubled. Mr. Cantrell, there's something you should see. He followed her downstairs to his home office. On his desk sat Julie's old laptop, the one he'd finally retrieved from storage, unable to look at it until now. I was dusting when it turned on, Marcia explained. And I saw, well, you should look. Anthony opened the laptop. The screen showed a folder labeled Renee and the girls, private. Inside were dozens of photos, Julie holding newborn twins. Julie reading to toddlers in a small apartment. Julie at birthday parties, Christmas mornings, hospital visits. And there were documents. Dozens of them. Encrypted files with names like legal protection and emergency plan, and if something happens to me. But when Anthony tried to open them, a password prompt appeared. He tried everything, Julie's birthday, their anniversary, her mother's name. Nothing worked. She knew, Anthony whispered. She knew something might happen. She was preparing. Preparing for what? Marcia asked. Before he could answer, the doorbell rang. Anthony walked to the front entrance and opened the door. No one was there. But on the marble step lay a single white envelope. His name was typed across the front in block letters. Anthony picked it up with trembling hands and opened it. Inside, on a plain white card, was a message. Those girls aren't yours. And they never will be. The words seemed to burn into his eyes. He looked up, scanning the driveway, the gates, the gardens. Whoever had left this was gone. But the threat remained. Anthony gripped the note tightly, his jaw set with determination. Someone was coming for the twins. And he would be ready. Anthony stood in the lobby of Grace Mercy Hospital at 7 in the morning, a cup of cold coffee in his hand and a weight on his chest that felt like it might crush him. He'd barely slept after finding the threatening note. The twins had nightmares. Marcia had stayed the night. And all Anthony could think about was the encrypted files on Julie's laptop, secrets his wife had kept, promises she'd made, a life she'd lived that he'd been too blind to see. He needed answers. And he needed to understand the woman he'd thought he knew. Can I help you, sir? A nurse at the desk looked up, her expression polite but tired. I'm looking for information about the volunteer program, Anthony said. Specifically about my late wife, Julie Cantrell. She volunteered here years ago. The nurse's face softened immediately. Mrs. Cantrell? Oh, she was wonderful. Let me get Sandra. She coordinated the volunteer program back then. 5 minutes later, an older black woman with kind eyes and graying hair emerged from an office. She stopped when she saw Anthony, recognition dawning on her face. Mr. Cantrell, she said softly. I'm Sandra Williams. I'm so sorry for your loss. Julie was one of the best people I ever knew. That's why I'm here, Anthony said. I need to know what she did. Who she helped. There are 2 little girls in my home right now because of her, and I realized I never really knew this part of her life. Sandra's eyes glistened. Come with me. She led him to a small conference room and closed the door. On the table, she spread out a worn 3-ring binder. This is our volunteer log from 3 years ago, Sandra explained. Julie came to us asking how she could help. Most volunteers do administrative work, filing, answering phones. But Julie. She smiled sadly. Julie wanted to help the ones who couldn't pay. The ones the system was failing. Anthony opened the binder. Page after page showed Julie's signature next to names, dates, and brief notes. Maria Santos, prenatal care, paid Keisha Johnson, emergency delivery, paid Renee Carter, ultrasound, meds, legal fees paid. The list went on. Dozens of names. Hundreds of appointments. Thousands of dollars. She paid for all of this. Anthony whispered. Every penny, Sandra confirmed. Out of her own account. She never asked for recognition. Never wanted her name on any plaques or donor walls. She just gave. Anthony's throat tightened. He'd given Julie access to their accounts, never questioning what she spent. He'd assumed shopping, charity galas, the usual things wealthy wives did. But this. Did she ever talk about Renee Carter? He asked. Sandra's expression grew somber. Renee was special to Julie. That poor woman came in bruised, pregnant, terrified. Her partner had beaten her so badly she could barely walk. Julie sat with her for hours. Held her hand during the ultrasound. Cried with her when she saw the twins for the first time. The twins, Anthony breathed. Julie was there when they were born, Sandra continued. I've never seen someone love children that weren't their own the way Julie loved those girls. She visited them every month. Brought them clothes, toys, food. She helped Renee escape her abuser, paid for a lawyer, made sure they had housing. Anthony felt his eyes burning. Why didn't she tell me? Sandra looked at him with gentle understanding. She said you carried enough weight. That you were always trying to fix the world's problems. And she didn't want this to become another problem you felt obligated to solve. She wanted it to be love. Pure and simple. The words hit him like a fist to the chest. She talked about you often, Sandra added softly. Said you were the strongest man she knew, but that you'd forgotten how to see people as people instead of puzzles to solve. She worried about you. Especially after she got sick. Anthony's vision blurred. I failed her. No, Sandra said firmly. You loved her. Sometimes we just love people differently than they need. But Julie never doubted your love. She just wanted you to see beyond your own grief. Anthony drove home in silence, Sandra's words echoing in his mind. When he pulled into the driveway, he saw the twins playing in the garden with Marcia, their laughter carried on the cold wind. They looked so small. So fragile. So much like Julie's hope made flesh. He walked past them into his office and sat down at Julie's laptop. The password prompt stared back at him, mocking his ignorance. He'd tried everything, dates, names, phrases she used to say. But nothing worked. Then he remembered Sandra's words. She was there when they were born. She loved those girls from the first moment. Anthony pulled out his phone and scrolled through the legal documents Renee had left behind. There, the twins' birth certificate. Date of birth, April 14, 2019. His hands shook as he typed, 041419. The laptop chimed. The files opened. Anthony exhaled a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. The first folder was labeled Renee, Correspondence. Inside were dozens of emails spanning 3 years. From Renee Carter to Julie Cantrell. Subject: Please help. Julie, he found me again. He broke the restraining order. I'm at the emergency room with the girls. I don't know what to do. I'm so scared. From Julie Cantrell to Renee Carter. Subject: Please help. I'm on my way. Pack a bag. You and the girls are staying somewhere safe tonight. This ends now. Anthony scrolled through message after message. Renee's desperation, Julie's unwavering support. There were photos too. His stomach turned as he opened them. Renee's face, swollen and bruised. Her arm in a cast. A black eye so severe it was nearly swollen shut. And through it all, Julie's responses: You're not alone. I won't let him hurt you again. The girls deserve better. You deserve better. The next folder was labeled Financial Records. Inside were receipts, bank transfers, invoices. First month's rent and deposit for Renee's apartment, $2,400. Prenatal care and medications, $3,847. Hospital delivery for twins, $12,500. Legal fees for restraining order, $5,000. Monthly support payments, $800, for 24 months. The total came to over $40,000. Money Julie had given without ever asking him. Money she'd earned through her own trust fund, spent on a woman and children he'd never met. Anthony's hands trembled as he opened the next folder. Emergency plan, if I don't make it. Inside was a document dated 2 weeks before Julie's death. Anthony, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry I never told you about Renee and the girls. I was afraid you'd see it as obligation instead of love. Renee is sick. Lung cancer. Stage 3. She's fighting, but if she doesn't make it, those girls will have no one. Marcus Bennett, their father, is dangerous. He has a history of violence and substance abuse. He cannot be allowed near them. I've documented everything, the abuse, the restraining orders, the police reports. It's all in this folder. Please, if anything happens to Renee, don't let the system swallow those girls. They deserve a chance. They deserve love. I know this is asking everything of you. But I believe in you, Anthony. I believe you're capable of love you don't even see in yourself yet. Trust your heart. It's stronger than you think. All my love, Julie. Anthony stared at the screen, tears streaming down his face. Julie had known. Had planned. Had tried to protect these children even from beyond the grave. And he'd been too consumed by his own grief to see it. The next folder made his blood run cold. Charity Fund Investigation. Inside were spreadsheets, emails, and handwritten notes. Julie had been tracking donations to a children's charity fund, one that Marcus Bennett had claimed to run. But the numbers didn't add up. Thousands of dollars donated, but no record of where the money went. No children helped. No programs funded. Julie's notes were meticulous. Donation records don't match expenditure reports. Where is the money going? Marcus Bennett listed as director, but charity has no physical office. Contacted 3 beneficiary families. None had ever heard of the charity. Suspected fraud. Evidence collected. Need to verify before reporting. The final note was dated 3 days before Julie entered hospice. Can't finish this. Too weak. But someone needs to stop him. He's stealing from children. From families who need help. If I don't make it, someone needs to finish what I started. Anthony sat back, his mind reeling. Marcus Bennett wasn't just an abuser. He was a con artist. A thief. And Julie had been building a case against him before cancer took her. Now he understood the threatening note. Marcus knew. Somehow, he knew Julie had been investigating him. And now that Renee was dead and the twins were with Anthony, Marcus saw an opportunity, or a threat. Anthony closed the laptop and looked out the window at Isabella and Annabella, still playing in the garden. Their laughter drifted through the glass like music he'd forgotten existed. Julie had lived a secret life of heroism while he'd been drowning in spreadsheets and boardrooms. She'd saved lives while he'd been building an empire. And she'd believed, even at the end, that he could carry on her work. He wouldn't fail her again. Anthony pulled out his phone and dialed Richard Hastings. Richard, I need you to do something for me. Dig into a charity called. He glanced back at the laptop. Children's Hope Foundation. Director is Marcus Bennett. I think it's a fraud, and I want evidence. Everything. Anthony, what's going on? Julie was investigating him before she died. If he's stealing from families, I'm going to make sure he pays for it. And I'm going to make damn sure he never gets near those girls. He hung up and walked outside. Isabella and Annabella ran to him, faces flushed from playing. Anthony. Marcia taught us how to make snow angels. Annabella exclaimed. Even though there's no snow. Isabella added, giggling. Anthony knelt down and pulled them both into a hug. I need to tell you something, he said softly. Miss Julie loved you. So much. More than I ever understood. And I promise you, I swear on everything I have, I'm going to protect you the way she would have wanted. From what? Isabella asked, suddenly serious. From anyone who tries to hurt you, Anthony said. No matter who they are. The girls hugged him tighter, and Anthony felt something shift inside his chest, something that had been frozen for 2 years beginning to thaw. Julie had given him a gift he didn't deserve, a second chance at love, at family, at being the man she'd always believed he could be. He wouldn't waste it. Anthony's private investigator, Marcus Chun, sat across from him in the home office, a manila folder thick with documents spread across the desk. It was 2 a.m. The twins were asleep upstairs. And what Marcus had discovered made Anthony's blood run cold. "You were right to be suspicious," Marcus said quietly. "The Children's Hope Foundation is a shell. A sophisticated one, but a shell nonetheless." Anthony leaned forward. "How much?" $3.7 million over 4 years. Marcus pulled out a spreadsheet. Donations from corporations, wealthy individuals, charity galas. All of it supposedly going to help at-risk children and struggling families. And where did it actually go? Marcus slid another document across the desk. Offshore accounts. Property purchases under LLC names. Luxury cars registered to fake businesses. Marcus Bennett didn't just steal from one charity, he created an entire network. Anthony's jaw clenched. And no one caught him. Someone did. Marcus's expression darkened. "Your wife. She started flagging discrepancies 8 months before she died. Look at this." He produced copies of emails Julie had sent to the charity's board of directors, questioning the financial reports. The responses were dismissive, condescending. "Mrs. Cantrell, we appreciate your concern, but our accountants have verified everything. Perhaps this is too complex for a volunteer to understand." "They brushed her off," Anthony whispered, rage building in his chest. "It gets worse." Marcus opened another file. Julie wasn't just investigating the charity. She was documenting Marcus Bennett's abuse of Renee Carter. She collected medical records, police reports, photographs. She was building a case to have him permanently stripped of any parental rights. Did she report it? She tried. But Bennett had connections. 2 members of the charity board also sit on the board of Cantrell Industries. Anthony's head snapped up. "What?" Marcus nodded grimly. "Gerald Miles and Cynthia Rourke. They've been on your board for 6 years. And according to these financial records, they've been receiving payments from Children's Hope Foundation, payments disguised as consulting fees." The room seemed to tilt. Gerald and Cynthia. He'd trusted them. Worked with them. They'd attended Julie's funeral, had sent flowers, had offered condolences. And all along, they'd been part of the fraud she was trying to expose. "There's more," Marcus said. "I found these in the county clerk's office, filed 3 weeks ago." He slid over a set of legal documents. Anthony's hands shook as he read them. The documents claimed Marcus Bennett was the biological father of the twins and that Anthony had kidnapped them after Renee's death. They included falsified affidavits claiming Renee had wanted Marcus to have custody, along with forged signatures on custody agreements. "This is fraud," Anthony breathed. "These documents are fake." "Of course they are. But they're filed with the court. And with the media circus around you right now, Bennett's lawyers are arguing that you're an unstable billionaire who took advantage of a dying woman's children." That's insane. It doesn't matter if it's insane. It matters if a judge believes it. Marcus leaned forward. "Anthony, someone is building a case to take those girls away from you. And they have money, connections, and a PR machine behind them." "Gerald and Cynthia," Anthony said, his voice deadly quiet. "That's my guess. They know Julie was investigating them. They know she documented everything. And now that Renee's dead and you have the girls, they see you as a threat." Anthony stood, pacing to the window. Outside, the mansion grounds were dark and still. Security lights cast long shadows across the gardens. "Those girls are not leverage," he said coldly. "They're children who lost their mother. And I'll be damned if I let these vultures use them as pawns." The confrontation came at 10 a.m. in the Cantrell Industries boardroom. Anthony had called an emergency meeting, and Gerald Miles and Cynthia Rourke sat at the polished table with carefully neutral expressions. "Thank you for coming on short notice," Anthony said, his voice ice. I wanted to discuss some financial discrepancies I've discovered. Gerald, a silver-haired man in his 60s, smiled thinly. Of course, Anthony. Though I'm not sure why this couldn't wait until the quarterly review. Children's Hope Foundation, Anthony interrupted. Ring a bell. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Cynthia, a sharp-featured woman with calculating eyes, didn't blink. It's a charity we've supported for years. What about it? $3.7 million embezzled. Fraudulent financial reports. Offshore accounts. Anthony slid folders across the table. And both of your names on the receiving end of suspicious consulting fees. Gerald's smile vanished. That's a serious accusation. It's a factual one. My wife was investigating this fraud before she died. And now I'm finishing what she started. Cynthia's expression hardened. Your wife was a well-meaning volunteer who didn't understand complex financial structures. If she made accusations, they were unfounded. Were they? Anthony opened his laptop and turned it to face them. Because I have her documentation. Every email. Every receipt. Every fraudulent transaction. And I have evidence linking both of you to Marcus Bennett. Gerald stood abruptly. This is harassment. We've done nothing wrong. Sit down, Anthony said, his voice cutting like a blade. Something in his tone made Gerald hesitate. He sat. You knew my wife was building a case, Anthony continued. You knew she was protecting Renee Carter and her children from an abusive criminal. And you helped Marcus Bennett cover his tracks because you were profiting from his fraud. You can't prove any of this, Cynthia said coldly. Actually, I can. And I will. Unless you walk away now, resign from the board, return every dollar you stole, and stay the hell away from those children. Gerald laughed bitterly. You think this is about money? Anthony, those girls are worth far more than a few $1 million. Anthony's blood ran cold. What does that mean? Cynthia leaned forward, her eyes glittering. Marcus Bennett is their biological father. He has legal rights, whether you like it or not. And when he gets custody, and he will, those girls come with a very generous life insurance policy Renee took out before she died. A policy naming Marcus as beneficiary if anything happened to the girls. Anthony felt sick. You're monsters. We're realists, Gerald said. You're a grieving widower playing hero. But this isn't a fairy tale, Anthony. Those girls aren't yours. They never will be. Walk away now, and we'll make this easy for you. Keep fighting and we'll destroy you. Get out, Anthony said quietly. I'm sorry. Cynthia raised an eyebrow. Get out of my building. His voice was deadly calm. You're both fired. And by tomorrow morning, every media outlet in the city will know exactly what you've done. Gerald's face flushed red. You're making a mistake. No. I'm correcting one. Anthony stood. Security will escort you out. And if either of you comes near those children, I will bury you. Legally, financially, and publicly. Are we clear? They left without another word, but the look Cynthia gave him was pure venom. Anthony increased security immediately. Armed guards now patrolled the mansion grounds. Cameras were installed at every entrance. The gates were reinforced. He sat the twins down that evening, trying to keep his voice calm. Girls, I need you to understand something. There are some bad people who might try to take you away from me. Isabella's eyes widened. The man from the news. Yes. And others. But I won't let them. I promise. We have security now, and... Is it our father? Annabella asked suddenly, her voice small. Anthony froze. What? Mom said our father was a bad man, Isabella explained. She said he hurt her. She said we should never trust him, even if he said nice things. She was right, Anthony said gently. And that's why I'm protecting you. Because your mom wanted you safe. And so did Julie. That night, He barely slept. Every sound made him jump. Every shadow seemed threatening. At 3:47 a.m., the alarm system screamed to life. Anthony bolted upright, his heart pounding. Red lights flashed in the hallway. He grabbed his phone and saw security alerts flooding the screen. Someone was in the house. Anthony ran to the twins' room and burst through the door. Both girls were sitting up in bed, terrified. "What's happening?" Isabella cried. "Stay here," Anthony ordered. "Lock the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone but me or Marcia." "Anthony," Annabella reached for him. "I'll be right back. I promise." He closed the door and heard the lock click. Then he moved down the hallway, his phone connecting to security. "Sir, we have an intruder," the guard's voice crackled. "Second floor, heading toward the children's wing. Police are en route." Anthony's blood turned to ice. Whoever had broken in wasn't here for money or valuables. They were here for the twins. He rounded the corner and saw a figure in dark clothes at the end of the hallway, trying the girl's door handle. "Get away from them!" Anthony shouted. The figure spun, a man, face covered by a ski mask. For a moment, they locked eyes. Then the intruder ran. Anthony gave chase, but the man was faster, disappearing down the servants' staircase. By the time Anthony reached the east wing, the window was open, cold air rushing in. The intruder was gone. Security guards swarmed the area. Police arrived minutes later. But Anthony stood in the hallway outside the twins' room, his hands shaking with rage and fear. Someone had gotten into his home. Had come within feet of the girls. He knocked gently. "Isabella, Annabella. It's me. You can open the door." The lock clicked, and both girls rushed into his arms, sobbing. "I've got you," he whispered, holding them tight. "You're safe. I've got you." But as he held them, Anthony knew the truth. This was only the beginning. Marcus Bennett and his conspirators weren't going to stop. And if Anthony wanted to protect these children, he'd have to fight harder than he'd ever fought in his life. The police detective, a weathered woman named Sarah Martinez, played the security footage on Anthony's laptop for the third time. The timestamp read 3:42 a.m. Two figures in dark clothing moved through the east wing with practiced precision. They knew exactly where the cameras were, avoided most of them. But the newly installed system Anthony had upgraded caught them anyway. "Professionals," Detective Martinez said grimly. They disabled the original alarm system, picked the lock on the service entrance, and went straight for the second floor. They knew the layout. Anthony watched the grainy footage, his jaw clenched. One intruder carried what looked like a syringe. The other had a canvas bag, the kind used to transport children. They weren't there to rob him. They were there to take the twins. "The one on the left," Anthony said, pointing at the screen. "He hesitates when I shout. Like he recognized my voice." Detective Martinez nodded. "We noticed that too. These weren't random criminals, Mr. Cantrell. Someone hired them. Someone who knew the girls were here and knew your security protocols." "Gerald Miles and Cynthia Rourke," Anthony said flatly. "That's a serious accusation. I fired them yesterday. 12 hours later, my home is invaded." Anthony's voice was ice. "That's not a coincidence." The detective studied him. "Do you have proof they're involved?" "Not yet. But I will." Upstairs, Marcia sat with the twins in the reinforced panic room Anthony had installed years ago, a remnant from Julie's paranoid phase after a stalker incident. Now he was grateful for his wife's foresight. Isabella and Annabella huddled on the couch, wrapped in blankets, their faces pale with exhaustion. "Are we safe here?" Annabella whispered. "Very safe," Marcia assured them. "This room has steel walls. No one can get in without the code." "What if they come back?" Isabella asked, her voice trembling. Anthony entered the room, and both girls immediately ran to him. He knelt and pulled them into his arms. "Listen to me," he said firmly. "I won't let anyone hurt you. Not tonight. Not ever. Do you understand?" But they almost got us, Annabella sobbed. If you hadn't come. But I did come. And I always will. Anthony pulled back to look them in the eyes. Those men were hired by bad people who want to use you. But they failed. And now I'm going to make sure they never try again. How? Isabella asked. By telling the truth. To everyone. 24 hours later, Anthony stood in front of a wall of cameras in the main conference room of Cantrell Tower. Every major news outlet in the city had shown up. The room buzzed with anticipation. Richard Hastings stood beside him, looking nervous. Anthony, are you sure about this? Going public could. I'm sure, Anthony interrupted. They made this a spectacle. Now I'm taking control of the narrative. He stepped up to the podium. The room fell silent. Good afternoon, Anthony began, his voice steady. My name is Anthony Cantrell. Many of you know me as the CEO of Cantrell Industries. But I'm not here today to talk about business. I'm here to talk about two little girls named Isabella and Annabella Carter. Camera flashes exploded. Reporters leaned forward. 3 weeks ago, I went to visit my late wife's grave. There I found these children, 6-year-old twins, crying at her tombstone. They were homeless. Their mother was dying in a hospital. And they had nowhere to go. He paused, letting the words sink in. My wife, Julie, had been helping their mother for years. Paying for medical care, legal protection, housing. She did this quietly, without recognition, because that's who she was. She saw people in pain and she helped them. No questions asked. Anthony's voice grew stronger. Before she died, Julie made a promise to these girls' mother, that her children would never be alone. When their mother passed away 2 weeks ago, I made the same promise. I took them into my home. I applied for emergency guardianship. And I vowed to protect them. A reporter shouted, Mr. Cantrell, there are allegations that you kidnapped these children. Those allegations are lies, Anthony cut him off. Manufactured by corrupt individuals who want to exploit these children for financial gain. Let me be very clear about what's happening here. He pulled out a folder and held it up. This contains evidence of massive fraud within the Children's Hope Foundation, a charity that was supposed to help at-risk families. Instead, it embezzled nearly $4 million. My wife discovered this fraud before she died. She was building a case to expose it. The room erupted with questions, but Anthony continued over the noise. 2 members of my own board of directors, Gerald Miles and Cynthia Rourke, were involved in this fraud. They received illegal payments. And when I fired them yesterday for their crimes, they retaliated. Last night, 2 armed men broke into my home and attempted to kidnap Isabella and Annabella. Gasps rippled through the crowd. These children's biological father, Marcus Bennett, is also involved. He's a documented abuser with a restraining order. He has no legal custody rights. Yet he's filed fraudulent custody documents, claiming I kidnapped his children he abandoned and terrorized. Anthony's voice dropped, becoming deadly serious. Let me make something absolutely clear. Isabella and Annabella Carter are not pawns. They are not assets. They are not leverage. They are 2 little girls who lost their mother. Who lost everything. And they deserve safety, love, and a future free from the monsters who want to use them. He looked directly into the cameras. These girls are Julie's legacy. She saved their lives before they were even born. She protected them from violence and poverty. She loved them like they were her own. And now they are my family. Not by blood, but by choice. By promise. By love. His voice cracked slightly. I am not a perfect man. I've made mistakes. I was blind to my wife's heroism while she was alive. But I see it now. And I will not fail her again. I will not fail these children. Anthony pulled out another document. I'm announcing today that I'm donating $5 million to establish the Julie Cantrell Foundation for at-risk families. Real help. Real transparency. Real accountability. And I'm calling on the district attorney to investigate Children's Hope Foundation and everyone involved in its fraud. He leaned forward, his eyes blazing. To Gerald Miles, Cynthia Rourke, Marcus Bennett, and anyone else who thinks they can intimidate me into abandoning these children, you picked the wrong fight. I have resources. I have evidence. And I have something you'll never understand: love for two little girls who deserve better than you. The room exploded. Every reporter shouted questions at once. Mr. Cantrell, will you pursue formal adoption? Have the police arrested anyone? What about the board members' denials? Anthony raised his hand. I'll take a few questions. But first, I want to say one more thing. He looked directly into the main camera. Isabella. Annabella. If you're watching this, you are safe. You are loved. And you are home. Forever. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within hours, #Julie's legacy was trending nationally. Public opinion, which had been split, shifted dramatically in Anthony's favor. News outlets dug into Children's Hope Foundation and found the fraud was even worse than Anthony had revealed. Gerald Miles and Cynthia Rourke were forced to resign from multiple boards. The district attorney announced a criminal investigation. Marcus Bennett's past came to light: 3 arrests for domestic violence, a DUI, and evidence he'd never actually been married to Renee or acknowledged the twins as his children until now. Donations poured into the newly established Julie Cantrell Foundation. Strangers sent letters of support. Other families came forward with stories of how Julie had helped them too. That evening, Anthony returned home exhausted. The twins were waiting in the living room with Marcia, watching the news coverage on mute. When they saw him, both girls ran to him. "We saw you on TV," Isabella said, her eyes wide. "You told everyone the truth." "You called us your family," Annabella added, her voice trembling. Anthony knelt down to their level. "Because you are. I know I'm not your father. I know I can't replace your mother. But if you'll have me, if you'll let me, I want to be your family. Really and truly." Isabella looked at Annabella. Some silent communication passed between them, the kind only twins shared. Then Isabella threw her arms around Anthony's neck. "We want that too." Annabella joined the hug. "Miss Julie sent you to us." "We know she did." Anthony held them both, feeling something in his chest that had been frozen for 2 years finally, fully thaw. Love. Pure and simple. The kind Julie had always believed he was capable of. "Thank you," he whispered. "For trusting me. For giving me a chance to be better." "Thank you for keeping your promise," Isabella said softly. They stayed like that for a long time, 3 people who'd each lost everything, holding each other like lifelines. Behind them, Marcia wiped tears from her eyes. And on the muted television, Anthony's press conference replayed, the closed captions showing his words: "These girls are Julie's legacy. And now they are my family." In the darkened hallway, Anthony noticed something he hadn't seen before: a framed photo of Julie that the girls must have found and placed on the side table. She was smiling, that brilliant, knowing smile she always had when she was keeping a beautiful secret. And for the first time since she died, Anthony smiled back. "I see them now, Julie," he whispered. "I finally see them." The package arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by an attorney Anthony had never met. "Mr. Cantrell?" The elderly man stood at the door, briefcase in hand, his expression solemn. "My name is Howard Breslin. I was your wife's personal attorney." Anthony frowned. Julie had a personal attorney? Separate from our family lawyers. "She retained me privately 3 years ago." Howard pulled an envelope from his briefcase, cream-colored paper, sealed with red wax. Julie's handwriting across the front, "For Anthony. When he's ready." Anthony's hands trembled as he took it. "What is this?" "Instructions were very specific," Howard explained. "I was to deliver this only when certain conditions were met, when you took guardianship of the Carter twins, when you went public to protect them, and when you were finally ready to understand." He smiled sadly. "Mrs. Cantrell was quite certain you'd know when that moment came." "How did she?" Your wife was a remarkable woman, Mr. Cantrell. She understood people better than they understood themselves. Howard nodded respectfully. I'll leave you to read this alone. But please know, she loved you very much. Everything she did was to protect you and those she cared about. After he left, Anthony stood in the foyer holding the letter, afraid to open it. It felt like holding Julie's hand again, warm, present, impossible. He walked to his office and closed the door. The wax seal broke with a soft crack. Inside were several pages in Julie's careful handwriting, dated 3 months before her diagnosis. Anthony's vision blurred before he'd even read the first word. My dearest Anthony, if you're reading this, it means several things have happened. I'm gone. You've found the twins. And you've chosen to fight for them despite everything it's cost you. I'm so proud of you, even though I'm not there to tell you in person. I need to explain things I never had the courage to tell you while I was alive. Not because I didn't trust you, God, Anthony, I've never trusted anyone more. But because I was afraid. Afraid of bringing danger to our door. Afraid of adding weight to shoulders already carrying too much. Afraid you'd see my work as obligation instead of love. Anthony had to stop reading. His chest felt like it was caving in. I met Renee Carter 3 years ago when she came to Grace Mercy Hospital, pregnant and terrified. Her face was so badly beaten I could barely recognize her features beneath the bruising. She was planning to return to the man who'd done it because she had nowhere else to go. I thought of us, Anthony. Of the life we'd built together. Of how lucky I was to be loved by a good man. And I couldn't let her go back into that hell. So I helped her. Paid for her care, her legal fees, her housing. When the twins were born, beautiful, perfect little souls, I was there. I held them in my arms and felt something I'd never felt before. Purpose beyond myself. You and I couldn't have children. The doctors made that clear. It broke my heart, Anthony, even though I never let you see how deeply. But these girls, they needed someone. And maybe I needed them too. I visited them monthly. Watched them grow. Helped Renee build a life free from violence. It became the most important work I'd ever done. Then I discovered Marcus Bennett, their biological father, was running a charity fraud. Millions of dollars stolen from families who desperately needed help. I started investigating, collecting evidence. But the deeper I dug, the more dangerous it became. Anthony's hands clenched the letter tighter. I found connections to people we knew. Board members. Lawyers. People with power and money who'd do anything to protect their crimes. I realized if I exposed them publicly, they might retaliate, not against me, but against you. Against Renee. Against the twins. So I worked quietly. Documented everything. Built an airtight case. But then I got sick. The cancer moved fast, Anthony. Faster than I expected. I knew I wouldn't finish what I'd started. So I made arrangements. Legal protections. Evidence stored safely. And this letter. I knew Renee was sick too. The doctors gave her 2, maybe 3 years. I made her promise that if anything happened to her, she'd take the girls to my grave. That you'd find them there. That you'd understand. Anthony's tears fell freely now, staining the paper. I know you're angry at me for keeping secrets. You have every right to be. But Anthony, I hid this from you not because I didn't believe in you, but because I believed in you too much. You carry the world on your shoulders. You fix problems, save companies, make impossible things happen. But sometimes you forget to see the people behind the problems. The humanity beneath the solutions. I needed you to find the twins not as a problem to solve, but as children to love. I needed you to choose them freely, not out of obligation to me. And if you're reading this, you did. You chose them. You fought for them. You became the man I always knew you could be. Inside the folder Howard gives you, you'll find everything, complete evidence of the charity fraud. Marcus Bennett's abuse documentation. Financial records linking Gerald Miles and Cynthia Rourke to the conspiracy. Witness statements. Everything the authorities need to stop them. Finish what I started, Anthony. Protect those girls. Give them the life they deserve, the life Renee dreamed of for them. But more than that, let them love you. Let yourself love them. Don't build walls around your heart the way you did after I got sick. Don't push away the good things because you're afraid of losing them. Love is worth the risk. Always. The twins are special. Isabella is brave but carries too much weight. Remind her she doesn't have to be strong all the time. Annabella sees beauty in broken things. Protect that gift. They'll challenge you. Frustrate you. Make you question everything. And they'll save you, just like they saved me. The final paragraph was written in shakier handwriting, as if Julie had been crying while she wrote it. If you find the girls, listen to your heart. Help them find the light. Be the father I know you can be. Love them with everything you have. And when they ask about me, tell them I kept my promise. Tell them they were never alone. I love you, Anthony Cantrell. I loved you from the moment I met you until my last breath. And if love continues beyond death, which I believe it does, I'm loving you still. Thank you for finishing my work. Thank you for being their hero. Forever yours, Julie. Anthony sat in silence for a long time, Julie's letter clutched in his hands. The office felt simultaneously empty and full, haunted by her absence, blessed by her presence. A soft knock interrupted his grief. Anthony. Isabella's voice came through the door. Are you okay? You've been in there a long time. He wiped his eyes and opened the door. Both twins stood in the hallway, concern etched on their small faces. I'm okay, he said, his voice rough. I received a letter. From Julie. From Miss Julie? Annabella's eyes widened. But she wrote it before she died. For me to read when I was ready. Anthony knelt down to their level. She wrote about you. About how much she loved you. About how she wanted me to take care of you. Isabella's eyes filled with tears. She really did keep her promise. She did. And now I understand why. Anthony pulled them both into a hug. She knew you'd save me as much as I'd save you. The next morning, Anthony delivered Julie's evidence folder to Detective Martinez and the district attorney's office. The response was swift and devastating, for the criminals. Within 72 hours, Gerald Miles was arrested at his country club on charges of embezzlement, fraud, and conspiracy. His assets were frozen. His lawyers scrambled. Cynthia Rourke was taken into custody at the airport, attempting to flee to the Cayman Islands with $2 million in cryptocurrency. She broke down during interrogation, implicating everyone involved. Marcus Bennett was tracked down in a motel outside the city. Police found forged custody documents, evidence of the planned kidnapping, and communications with the men who'd broken into Anthony's home. He was charged with domestic abuse, fraud, attempted kidnapping, and conspiracy. The Children's Hope Foundation was shut down. Federal investigators seized all records. Dozens of other victims came forward, families Marcus had scammed, women he'd abused, children left with nothing while he lived in luxury. The news coverage was relentless. 2 weeks later, Anthony stood in his office watching the sunset paint the city gold. The twins were doing homework at the kitchen table with Marcia. The mansion, once cold and empty, now echoed with their laughter. His phone rang. Detective Martinez. Mr. Cantrell, I wanted to give you an update. Marcus Bennett and his co-conspirators have all been formally charged. With the evidence your wife compiled, the DA expects convictions on all counts. Bennett's looking at 15 to 20 years. Anthony exhaled slowly. And the custody claim? Dismissed. The court ruled the documents fraudulent. Your emergency guardianship is being fast-tracked for permanent adoption approval. Congratulations. After hanging up, Anthony walked to the photo of Julie he kept on his desk. She smiled back at him, that knowing, beautiful smile. We did it, he whispered. Your girls are safe. Your work is finished. But even as he said it, he knew the truth. Julie's work wasn't finished. It lived on in Isabella's bravery, in Annabella's kindness, in every life she'd touched. It lived on in him. For the first time since her death, Anthony felt peace settling into his bones. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of purpose. Julie's last words echoed in his mind. If you find the girls, listen to your heart. Help them find the light. He had found them. He had listened. And together, they were finding the light. Spring came to the city like a whispered promise, melting the last remnants of winter and painting the world in shades of green and gold. 3 months had passed since the arrests, since the trial, since the world had learned the truth about Julie Cantrell's quiet heroism. In those 3 months, the mansion had transformed. Children's drawings covered the refrigerator, crayon masterpieces of stick figure families and rainbow skies. Toys cluttered the once pristine living room. Laughter echoed through hallways that had been silent for 2 years. And Anthony Cantrell, billionaire, CEO, man who'd forgotten how to feel, was learning to be a father. It wasn't easy. There were nightmares, both his and theirs. Moments when Isabella would freeze at a loud noise, instinctively protecting her sister. Times when Annabella would hoard food in her room, unable to believe there would always be enough. Nights when Anthony would stand outside their door, listening to them cry, feeling utterly helpless. But there were victories too. The first time Isabella called him Dad by accident, then froze, terrified she'd overstepped. Anthony had knelt down, tears in his eyes, and said, "You can call me that. If you want to." The morning Annabella brought him breakfast in bed, burnt toast and orange juice with too much pulp, and announced, "Marcia taught me how to make Dad breakfast." Her eyes had shone with such pride that Anthony had eaten every bite, pretending it was delicious. The afternoon they'd all fallen asleep on the couch during a movie, tangled together like a real family. Anthony had woken first and just watched them sleep, their small faces peaceful, and felt something he'd thought was dead, contentment. Dr. Sarah Chun, the child psychologist Anthony had hired, told him during one of their sessions, "They're healing because you're healing. Children are mirrors, Mr. Cantrell. They reflect the love they receive." "I don't always know if I'm doing it right," Anthony had admitted. "No parent does. But you show up. You try. That's what matters." The legal adoption was finalized on a Tuesday in April. Judge Patricia Morrison, a stern woman with kind eyes, looked over the paperwork and then at Anthony, Isabella, and Annabella sitting together in the courtroom. "Mr. Cantrell," she said, "I've reviewed your case thoroughly. The home studies, background checks, character references, and the girls' own statements. I've also read extensively about your late wife's work and the circumstances that brought these children into your care." Anthony held his breath. "In my 30 years on the bench, I've rarely seen a case where the fit between guardian and children is so clearly meant to be." Judge Morrison smiled. "It is my honor to grant this adoption. As of today, Isabella Marie Cantrell and Annabella Rose Cantrell are officially and legally your daughters." The courtroom erupted in applause. Marcia, Richard Hastings, Detective Martinez, and dozens of others who'd supported them through the fight. But Anthony only saw the twins. Saw their faces light up with joy. Saw them look at each other with that silent twin communication, then turned to him. "We're really your daughters?" Isabella whispered, as if afraid the words might shatter if spoken too loudly. "Really and truly," Anthony said, his voice thick. "Forever." Annabella threw her arms around his neck. "We have a forever family now." Isabella joined the hug, and Anthony held them both, feeling the weight of responsibility and the lightness of love intertwining in his chest. They were his. Officially, legally, eternally his. And he was theirs. That evening, as golden light painted the mansion warm, Anthony found the girls in their room, no longer the guest suite, but truly their room now. They decorated it with posters, stuffed animals, and photographs. On the nightstand sat a framed picture of Renee holding them as babies, and beside it, one of Julie smiling. "Girls," Anthony said from the doorway. "There's somewhere I'd like to go. If you're ready." They knew immediately. He saw it in their eyes. "To see Miss Julie?" Annabella asked softly. Anthony nodded. "I think it's time we all visited her together." The cemetery was quiet in the late afternoon, the only sounds the wind through the trees and distant birdsong. Spring flowers bloomed across the grounds, tulips, daffodils, early roses. They walked together to Julie's grave, Anthony holding both their hands. He'd brought fresh white lilies, Julie's favorite. The headstone looked the same as it had that first day he'd found the twins here, kneeling in the cold, asking if their mommy still hurt. Julie Cantrell. Beloved wife, light to all. Anthony knelt and placed the lilies gently against the stone. The twins knelt beside him, one on each side. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Isabella reached out and touched the engraved letters of Julie's name. Miss Julie, she said quietly, we came to say thank you. And to tell you we're okay now. Annabella nodded, her voice trembling. Anthony, our dad, he kept your promise. He didn't let us be alone. Anthony felt his throat tighten. We have a home now, Isabella continued. A real home with our own room and toys, and Marcia makes us pancakes that don't burn. She smiled through tears. And Dad reads us stories every night. Even when he's tired. Even when he has important work. He's teaching us to be brave, Annabella added. Like you were. Like our mom was. Anthony's vision blurred. He'd cried more in the past 3 months than he had in his entire adult life. But these tears felt different, not grief but gratitude. Isabella turned to look at him, her dark eyes wise beyond her 6 years. Miss Julie didn't send us to her grave to find you, she said softly. Annabella finished the thought, their twin voices harmonizing. She sent us to you to find ourselves. The words struck Anthony like lightning. All this time, he'd thought he was saving them. Rescuing them from danger, from loneliness, from a system that would have swallowed them whole. But they had saved him. From bitterness. From isolation. From a half-life lived in the shadow of grief. Julie had known. Had understood what he needed even better than he had. She hadn't just given him children to protect, she'd given him a reason to live again. Anthony pulled both girls into his arms, and for the first time since Julie's funeral, for the first time in front of anyone, he broke down completely. Great, heaving sobs shook his body. All the grief he'd locked away, all the pain he'd refused to feel, all the love he'd been too afraid to give, it poured out of him like a dam finally breaking. I'm sorry, he choked out. I'm so sorry, Julie. For not seeing. For not understanding. For being blind to all the good you did. Isabella hugged him tighter. She knew you'd understand eventually. She believed in you, Annabella whispered. She told our mom you just needed time. Anthony pulled back, wiping his eyes, looking at both of them, these brave, beautiful, broken and healing souls who'd chosen to love him despite everything. She gave me the greatest gift, he said, his voice raw. She gave me you. They sat together in the grass, the three of them, as the sun began to set. Anthony told them stories about Julie, how she laughed at terrible jokes, how she cried during commercials, how she believed people were fundamentally good even when the world tried to prove her wrong. The girls told him stories about their mother, Renee's strength, her sacrifice, her love that had protected them even from beyond the grave. And slowly, the pieces of their broken hearts began to fit together, forming something new. Not a replacement for what they'd lost, but an addition. A family built not on blood, but on choice. On promise. On love. As the sky turned purple and gold, they stood together. Anthony took one last look at Julie's grave, his hand resting on the cool stone. Julie, he whispered, I'll finish your work. I promise. The foundation is helping dozens of families already. We're exposing corruption, protecting the vulnerable, giving people the chances you gave Renee. He paused, feeling the twins' small hands slip into his. But your greatest work wasn't the charity. It wasn't the money or the advocacy or even saving Renee and the girls. His voice cracked. Your greatest work was turning me back into a man capable of love. You saw something in me I'd forgotten existed. And somehow, even in death, you brought it back to life. The wind picked up, rustling through the trees, and for just a moment, Anthony could swear he felt Julie's presence, warm, proud, at peace. Isabella squeezed his hand. She's smiling. I know she is. How do you know? Anthony asked. Because we're happy, Annabella said simply. And that's all she ever wanted. They walked away from the grave hand in hand, their shadows stretching long in the dying light. Behind them, the white lilies glowed like small stars against the darkening grass. Anthony didn't look back. He'd spent 2 years looking backward, living in the past, drowning in what he'd lost. Now, he looked forward. At the mansion, they'd watch a movie and eat popcorn. Tomorrow, the girls would start at their new school. Next week, they had a family therapy session. Next month, a vacation to the beach. The twins had never seen the ocean. Life stretched ahead, full of ordinary moments that felt extraordinary because they'd almost never happened. As they reached the car, Annabella tugged on his sleeve. "Dad." The words still made his heart skip. "Yes, sweetheart. Do you think Mom and Miss Julie are together? Watching us?" Anthony looked up at the sky, now scattered with the first stars of evening. "I think they are," he said. "And I think they're proud of us. For choosing each other. For becoming a family." "We didn't just become a family," Isabella corrected gently. "We always were. We just didn't know it yet." She was right. From the moment Julie held them as newborns, from the moment she made her promise, from the moment Anthony found them crying at her grave, they'd been connected by invisible threads of fate, love, and sacrifice. They climbed into the car, and as Anthony started the engine, he glanced one last time at the cemetery gates. A shaft of golden light broke through the clouds, illuminating Julie's section of the grounds like a spotlight. And Anthony smiled. "Thank you," he whispered. "For everything. For them. For this. For showing me that love doesn't end, it just changes form." Then he drove home, that word finally meaning something again, with his daughters chattering in the back seat about what movie they'd watch and whether Marcia would let them have ice cream. And in that moment, Anthony Cantrell understood Julie's final lesson. The greatest legacy we leave isn't measured in money or monuments or headlines. It's measured in the lives we touch, the love we give, and the light we help others find in their darkest moments. Julie had given him that light. And now, hand in hand with Isabella and Annabella, he would carry it forward. Forever.
If this story touched your heart, if you saw yourself in Anthony's grief, or the twins' courage, or Julie's selfless love, please subscribe to Mr. Crown Stories. Leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. And share this story with someone who needs to remember that love never really ends. It just finds new ways to save us. You are enough. You are worthy. And your story matters. Until next time, keep believing in second chances. Keep choosing love. Keep finding the light.